I live in a small city in England and am currently in my final year of university. I am not your average student. I don't socialize and I don't have any real friends. I prefer the company of my own thoughts. In my spare time, I like to hike through forests, watch movies or, if it's warm enough, read books in the sunshine. For the first year of university, I also cycled a lot. That was my main hobby back then. I loved exploring the countryside that surrounds my city. It gave me a sense of freedom and calmed down my raging anxiety. It made me feel at peace with the world. But all good things eventually come to an end, and so did this. After a while I realized that I'd explored all there was to explore, and my cycling trips began to feel tedious and pointless. I decided to try something different. Night cycling. I know a lot of people would frown at the idea of cycling through deserted country roads at midnight by yourself, and my family definitely didn't approve when I told them about it sometime later, but I wasn't worried. I'd spent enough time outside to know the world isn't as dangerous as the news would have you believe. Serial killers don't wait around every corner waiting to murder random people, and I didn't believe in the supernatural. Well, I wanted to believe, and that was one of the reasons I decided to try night cycling in the first place. Maybe, just maybe, I'd see something out of the ordinary. Something that would make me believe that there's more to this mundane world than meets the eye, and that there are hidden things lurking just out of sight. Although I might sound like it, I definitely wasn't brave. Every time I left the safety of the lit city streets and entered the ominous darkness that hung thickly over the countryside, I felt my heart throbbing in my throat and all my hair standing on end. It was a whole other world, shadows playing tricks on my eyes, snapping twigs and rustling leaves signaling the presence of creatures unseen. My imagination ran wild whenever I looked into the darkness that surrounded the small bubble of ghostly light in front of me. 1 month passed, then 2, then 3, and nothing happened. As I was planning another midnight excursion, it occurred to me that this too had begun to feel tedious. The tension that accompanied my night rides was tiring, and once again it all felt repetitive, pointless. I decided that I'd take a rest from cycling for a while, starting the next day. After all, I already planned my ride for the day in detail, and it would pass through segments I'd never been through before. As always, I went through the entire route using Google Street View. I'd started doing that some time ago after I encountered some unwelcome surprises on my rides. It also let me familiarize myself with the route, which decreased my chances of getting lost and having to pull up Google Maps in the middle of nowhere. I didn't like stopping on my night rides. I felt vulnerable, and the lack of wind rushing past me created an eerie, uncomfortable silence. I saw that there was nothing wrong with the route, but one segment did bother me. I had to pass through a small pedestrian pathway that connected 2 parallel roads. I zoomed in as much as I could from both ends, but the image Street View gave me wasn't of much help. All I saw was a blurry pathway passing through dense trees. I wasn't happy about it. You see, I once accidentally took a wrong turn and had to cycle through a forest. It was so dark and I was so creeped out that in that forest I took another wrong turn and ended up lost in the woods in the dead of night. I found my way out in what was probably about 10 minutes. After all, I knew these woods pretty well, but after such an intense shock, I'm sure you can understand why I wasn't particularly keen on that little segment of my route. But the segment was very short and straight, so I figured I could survive 1 minute of cycling through dense trees. I felt silly as I got onto my bike that night. Having already decided to quit, I didn't have the resolve I had on all my previous excursions. Self-doubt started creeping in. Why was I doing this? Wouldn't it be better to quit today and spend the evening watching TV in a warm, cozy bed? I sighed and, nonetheless, pedalled off. The ride went smoothly, as it usually did, and then I arrived at that small pathway that I had dreaded. According to my phone, at least. I couldn't see it. I went back and forth along the stretch of the road I was on, shining my flashlight until I spotted a narrow gap in the bushes and an old, worn-down, rotten sign that said this was indeed a footpath. It was quite a way off to the left of where it was supposed to be, according to Google Maps, I shrugged it off anyway and decided that my GPS was having a fit, as it often did. Even though the road I was on happened to be lit by old street lamps that cast a dim, grossly orange light around them, I couldn't see the tiniest bit of what was beyond the bushes. I sucked in a breath and stepped into the darkness. As soon as I did so, it occurred to me that the path was extremely uneven. Pits, large rocks and gnarly tree roots covered it, so I ended up having to carry my bicycle. Luckily, it was a road bike, so it was quite light. It didn't occur to me at the time that when I'd looked at what was visible of the path on Street View, it appeared smooth. After a few minutes of walking, I could no longer see the orange light of the street lamps. All around me were trees, and I felt like I was walking through a forest. I tried to think happy thoughts to keep myself from panicking. I knew I wasn't in any real danger, but still, I didn't like the idea of walking through a pitch-black forest. As I'd already said, being on foot made me feel vulnerable, and the path went on and on and on. Unable to take it anymore, I whipped out my phone, bringing up the map. I was almost there. A few more steps and I'd be out on the road. I sped up. Just as my GPS showed that I'd reached the end of the footpath, dense, twisted trees and bushes blocked my way out. I looked at the map again. The path was completely straight. Why were there trees in my way? Why couldn't I see the road? My heartbeat quickened as I frantically began stumbling this way and that, shining the flashlight all over the place in hopes of finding a way through this dense vegetation. The road, I thought. It's just on the other side. It must be. There has to be a way through. My arms began to ache from maneuvering the bike. The flashlight, you see, was attached to the handlebars. I crunched loudly through twigs, panic beginning to take control of my body, and then I froze. I shivered, feeling a sudden chill. I could feel all the hair on my body standing on end as my skin tingled with goosebumps. I felt like I was being watched. The darkness surrounding me felt intrusive, unfriendly. I don't know how else to describe it. It felt like the darkness itself was circling around me, like a lion circles around its prey. My flashlight began to flicker. I smacked it viciously. Stay on, please, God, stay on. The light died. I stood paralyzed, my breathing rapid as darkness enveloped me on all sides. And then, what felt like two ice-cold razor-sharp claws pinched the skin on my neck. I would have screamed, but my throat was too tight to allow any sound to escape. I turned around, dropping the bike and swatting empty air with both hands. Nothing. And I felt the same sensation on my right arm. I swatted again and took a few steps backwards, bumping into something wet and furry. It rushed off immediately, leaving behind it only the stench of rotten meat. And I felt the skin on my neck. My right arm and my left thigh had been pinched all at once. This time, however, the claws went deep into my flesh and wouldn't let go no matter what I did. When I swatted at them, there was nothing. No claws, no hand, but I could feel them there. They were boring deep into my body, and I could feel hot blood pouring out of the wounds. My eyes began to tear up from excruciating pain as I felt more pinches on my shoulder, my back, my stomach. They were all over me. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing hysterically, feeling nauseous. Just then I saw a light. I heard the soft whirring of an engine in the distance. The pain ceased at once, and the sensation of being brutally pinched everywhere at once by ice-cold razor-sharp claws just disappeared. My flashlight turned back on, still flickering. It was a car passing through. Its headlights flickered as it passed me just on the other side of the shrubbery, but their bright golden light was enough for me to spot a break in the bushes. Without wasting a second, I grabbed my bike and raced for it, rushing out onto the road just as the car disappeared around the corner. I've never in my life been so happy to see a road. Immediately, my flashlight went dark again. I got onto my bike quicker than ever before and pedaled furiously just as I felt something ice cold touch the back of my neck. After about a minute of pedaling blindly along the road, my flashlight turned back on. No flickering this time. As soon as I returned to my dorm, I locked myself in my room and then rushed over to the mirror. My clothes were soaked with blood, but when I lifted them, there were no wounds. There were only a few small scrapes and bruises. I felt extremely nauseous. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in bed, staring at the wall and trying to piece together what had happened, all the time expecting to feel the touch of ice-cold claws on my bare skin. I spent weeks looking through various websites about cryptids and paranormal reports from around my area, but I couldn't find anything remotely similar to what I had experienced. If anyone listening to this has any idea what it was, then please tell me. I'll be eternally grateful. I haven't gotten a good night's sleep ever since that incident. I keep having these vivid, almost lucid nightmares. Needless to say, I no longer go cycling at night. I try not to go out after dark at all, unless it's absolutely necessary. On the rare occasion that I find myself alone on a dark, quiet footpath at night with trees nearby, I swear I can feel a chilly breeze coming out of nowhere, carrying with it the faint stench of rotten meat. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. It really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.